Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome in. This is FST Fantasy Sports Today. My name is Matt Striker. His name is Joe Pisapia, and this is the place. If you want to dominate, whether it be season long, DFS, straight up wagering, we have you covered. Now, you may have recognized the name Joe Pisapia. Of course, he's the author of the Fantasy Black Book series. But what we have here today, Joe, I believe, is perhaps the most palatable, digestible, comprehensive preseason look at NFL football. And on behalf of everyone, I want to say thank you for what you've put together. We have an amazing show ahead of us. Really quickly, folks, at SportsGrid and at SportsGrid TV, those are our social media handles. You're going to want to make sure you're following because we're giving you everything that no one else is giving you. Joe, my man, thank you. What's up?
Happy Memorial Day weekend to everybody. Hope everyone's enjoying the weather and all of that good stuff. And yes, I've been working feverishly on the Black Book for the last 4 weeks for football, and that's going to be out in early June. So I figured, why not take a little break from the baseball? And let's share with everybody out there some of the early looks, whether it be in fantasy or wagering when it comes to the NFL season, because now the draft is done. Free agency's done. Sure, there'll be some guys still to sign, more undrafted free agents, more veterans looking for homes that don't have one currently. But it's a great time to take a look because the early boards for NFL, some of them are really good, some of them are a little off. The early ranks for NFL players, where you're playing best ball or even you're doing dynasty startup drafts, some of them are good, some of them are off. And we're going to take a look at some of those values today as we go through hour two. Is going to be a lot of wagering, but again, a lot of that wagering that has to do with numbers that are set as projections, and that's fantasy stuff. So everything crosses over once again, and in hour one, we're going to talk about some of the early ranks, including a new way to look at some of the fantasy offenses and how to invest in them. So let's start with the headlines in the NFL, because there have been some in the last few weeks that are really important. The first one being Kyren Williams dealing with a foot issue. Now, this is a problem because this is not the first time he's had issues with feet, ankles, issues down below the knee.
Never good.
And last time I checked, when you're a running back, that's a difficult thing. And foot issues, especially for NFL guys, especially the ones that play on turf, tend to be things that do pop up from time to time. And it's a problem because Kyren Williams last year was one of the biggest point getters in terms of average fantasy points per game than anybody else at the position. He was a league-winning guy. He was a guy people picked up off the waiver wire, ended up having a fantastic season. And now people are kind of concerned about, well, who am I getting? Am I getting the Kyren Williams who's hurt? Am I getting the Kyren Williams who was a league winner last year? And now all of a sudden you're starting off. I know it's only May here when we're talking about him, but are we starting off already on the wrong foot with Kyren Williams, where we're going into the season and we already have those questions coming up again? So that's a lot to take in. Also, Ladd McConkey taking the majority of snaps with the first team in the slot. This is a great thing for Ladd McConkey's value. Now, Ladd McConkey, in case you didn't know, the wide receiver was drafted by the Los Angeles Chargers, brought in there. Keenan Allen's gone. Mike Williams is gone. Yeah, Palmer's around. Yeah, Quentin Johnson around. But Ladd McConkey is this guy that is really intriguing. In fact, Matt, I get asked, because everyone's getting asked, who's the next Puka Nacua? Well, I don't think there's going to be a Puka Nacua. I don't think it's a guy that's going to be undrafted in fantasy leagues that goes on to be a top 5 wide receiver. Like, that stuff doesn't happen every year. But if there is a wide receiver in the market who is lined up for opportunities, lined up in a position where it could be really good with a really good quarterback in Justin Herbert, then I think it's Ladd McConkey. And Ladd McConkey is one of these players, Matt, that I think early on people need to start getting very comfortable with. Yes, the more people like me start to talk about him, the more people are going to get familiar.
Well, of
but
course.
In your casual leagues, Matt, Ladd McConkey is one of these guys that I think is going to be floating around late. I think has enormous upside, not just because of the talent, but because of the opportunity of all those vacated targets of those other wide receivers that are now no longer with Los Angeles.
Yep, it's a fantastic point. So it begs the question, give me a hypothetical. In which round would you find yourself hovering your cursor over McConkey, and give me one or two other receivers that may make me look left and look right before I would hopefully ultimately click on McConkey?
That is a really interesting one. Right now, he's currently going around like player 100-ish. Other wide receivers around that range, guys like Jamison Williams, right? A little all or nothing kind of guy. Some veterans like Tyler Lockett, still coming off a very good season. So okay. Lockett is another one of these players that, again, another year older. Does he start to lose some of those touches to, the Jackson Smith and Jigba at this point in his career? And then after that, you have a lot of unproven guys. You have guys like Mike Williams, who's perpetually missing time and hurt. Keon Coleman, a rookie. So, yeah, I think when you're looking at the other rookies, he's probably higher on a tier than he's not where the elite guys are, right? He's not where Neighbors is. He's certainly not where Marvin Harrison is. But if he continues to hover around pick 100 or somewhere in that range, which I think by the time we get to August, it's going to be more like 90, I think Ladd McConkey is still a guy that can return that value. If you look at the early 2024 projections on Fantasy Pros too, 67 receptions, 873 yards, 5 touchdowns. I think this is the floor for McConkey. I think there's a world where that 67 becomes an 87 and that 873 becomes 1,000. Because if Quentin Johnston isn't able to acclimate to whatever new offense that Jim Harbaugh comes in and installs, and they don't really get the most out of him, that's Josh Palmer and it's Ladd McConkey. And Ladd McConkey, I think, is the more intriguing fantasy guy, especially in full PPR leagues. So maybe the touchdown total doesn't raise above 5 or 6, but at the end of the day, we're talking about receptions and we're talking about targets. There's an opportunity for that to grow significantly with McConkey.
Looking at some of the other headlines, there's the obvious news that no one is concerned about Christian McCaffrey not being at OTAs, and that's understandable. I think certain players have earned that right. But there's some information coming out with the Steelers quarterback Justin Fields, and I really want to know your thoughts there.
Well, Fields said recently, I'm nowhere near my ceiling, and that's great. It's good that he hasn't lost confidence, because I think sometimes when young quarterbacks come in the league, and especially if they're very heralded or had great success in college, right, win Heismans, are playing in, national championship playoffs, that there's a tendency if they don't perform well in the NFL, they lose some of that confidence. But it doesn't seem to be a problem with Fields, and that's a good thing. He's ended up with Mike Tomlin, who's a great football coach in an organization that is as steady as they come. You got to go back to the 70s. They've had 3 coaches, I think, right? 3 coaches since 1972 or some crazy stuff like that in Pittsburgh. Think about that for a second. In the world we live in, they've had 3 football coaches in Pittsburgh since 1972. So there's a lot to unpack here. It might have even been earlier now that I think about it, but I don't remember when Chuck Noll started, but I wasn't born yet. Let's put it that way.
Neither was I.
So just to put that in perspective, since old man Joe has been alive, there's been 3 football coaches with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I digress. Justin Fields was acquired for next to nothing, which makes no sense to me. There's a lot of teams in the league that should have been on this for a 6th-round pick. It's just absurd that Justin Fields ended up going for that, because he does have so much upside. Now, Russell Wilson is ahead of him as the quote-unquote starter. But you have to ask the question, is Russell Wilson the future, or is Justin Fields the future? And I think it's Fields, because you're talking about a guy who's still young enough, still athletic enough. Can you get him to a point in your system where he feels more comfortable? It's certainly going to be a better offensive line that he's going to play in front of in Pittsburgh. He's going to have some better weapons, certainly better coaching. And I think that at the end of the day is what you've been lacking so much. Now, I don't love Arthur Smith as an offensive coordinator. I'm not going to make any bones about that. But Arthur Smith as a coordinator does kind of filter in a little bit more, I think, to the style of play defense, run the football, stuff that might put Justin Fields in a position to be really successful in the NFL. If you look at the stats, this is a guy that still finished as, QB 18 last year after missing games. He only played 13 games. He still finished as QB 18. He still had over 650 rushing yards last year. He's a player that still has a lot of talent, has arm strength, has the athleticism you're looking for in this day and age in the NFL. The question is, can you develop him in the right situation? And Chicago wasn't a great situation. And that also, I think, begs the question, is there going to be some growing pains for Caleb Williams potentially there? I think the answer is yes. I think it's a very tough town to play in. I think the expectations are very high. This is not the kind of situation where you're dropping a young quarterback in with Andy Reid. So, it's a lot to unpack. Caleb Williams might not be the most successful of the rookie quarterbacks in year 1, potentially. Just saying. I know there's a lot of bells and whistles, a lot of discussions, a lot of hype, a lot of big-time wide receivers around him, but it's going to be a lot of interesting pieces moving in 2024. When we come back, we're going to talk about more quarterbacks in the early QB rankings right here on FST.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The Cam Rising stuff last year with Utah, 3 months of pretending he was questionable with a torn ACL, ridiculous.
It's a lot of gray right now when it comes to this stuff, and we really are. When people say we're in like the second or third inning of sports betting, that's why I agree, because there's so many of those situations that are very, very difficult to explain to a novice.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
A surprise winner on the PGA Tour. Taylor Pendrith ends up winning his first PGA Tour win.
He was pretty darn lucky to win. Ben Coles should have won that tournament. Also seeking his first PGA Tour victory, he went into the 18th hole, the easiest hole on the golf course, with a one-shot lead, and he was there in two, just less than 30 feet from the cup.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Devastating loss to Georgia Tech, where they made significant coaching errors, but Miami, with all of these changes, obviously looking to churn over this roster and upgrade the talent level.
Don't sleep on Rick Pitino. Listen, at the end of the day, the portal is the portal, Mike. Don't matter where you came from, it's where you're going and how much money can you get.
Inside the transfer portal, only on SportsGrid.
Great.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports Today. Matt and Joe with you here, giving you everything you need in order to dominate, giving you an early look at the NFL season. Of course, the Fantasy Black Book Series is on its way. Make sure you go and check that out when it comes your way. And during the break, Joe and I were doing this fun thing, which I can imagine most of us do, is we were looking at schedules of a particular team and thinking, hey, they could be this record by the 5th week. And what does that mean for certain personnel? And it sets up this early quarterback ranking portion of the show. Because honestly, there are certain teams, if you look at their first 4 or 5 games, you could see a change in personnel by the time they reach that 5th game if a team is, say, 1-4, 2-3. Mm-hmm. So let's go to the early quarterback rankings. And at the top, there are no surprises. But, Joe, I'll let you take it from here. We go inside the writer's room of the Fantasy Black Book. Let's go.
Well, I do all the quarterback profiles every year because my whole thing is if you understand the quarterback play, then you understand the offense. If you understand the offense, then you know how to invest in fantasy football. So to me, it's the most important of all the profiles that you're going to read, because if the quarterback can't execute, then guess what? Everything around him crumbles. Just take a look at some of the things that have happened in the NFL in the last few years when it comes to those players we had expectations for, but unfortunately bad quarterback play put those expectations to bed. Now, there is a surprise at the top because I have Patrick Mahomes as my QB1 going into this year. People say, well, what about Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts, all those rushing touchdowns? Do we really expect them to set a record 2 years in a row in rushing touchdowns? I don't. Jason Kelsey's gone under center, right? He is the guy that made that brotherly shove work. How many of those rushing touchdowns came on that play? Now, maybe they'll be able to make it work with somebody else, but Jason Kelsey was the guy who really made that play work at the end of the day, if you know anything about football. Then Josh Allen, again, great season for Josh Allen, another fantastic fantasy performance. So 2 guys who get a lot of fantasy points with their legs. They might outscore Patrick Mahomes. However, you're taking away Stephon Diggs, who Stephon Diggs was not the same guy towards the end of the season. There was one guy who was fading Stephon Diggs going into last year. It was this guy. Yeah. But having him in the offense is still important, even theoretically. And now you have Keon Coleman, interesting player. Khalil Shakir, interesting player. Dalton Kincaid, James Cook. But there's still questions surrounding that. And it's funny because Patrick Mahomes, let's see here. Let's go back in the Wayback Machine all the way to 2022, where he threw for 5,200 yards and 41 touchdowns. And let's go back a year further. Let's go back to 2021, where he threw for 4,800 yards and 4,700 yards. And you're seeing some of these projections right now for Patrick Mahomes at 4,200. If you go look and wager on him right now, it's around the 4,200 range. Are we kidding ourselves? Last year, he had 0 wide receiver play, 0. And I know Tyreek Hill isn't there anymore. Travis Kelce was hurt last year. Hopefully you get Rashee Rice at some point. We'll see how many games he gets suspended. But you brought in Hollywood Brown. You drafted Xavier Worthy. You have some better pieces now around him, plus hopefully a healthy Travis Kelce. So Patrick Mahomes, it's ridiculous to think that he can't be the QB1 or isn't the safest of all these investments considering what's around him right now. So we could split hairs about who's going to be the guy at the top. But if you're asking me in Superflex leagues especially who's the best investment this year, I still think it's Patrick Mahomes. I understand last year was a down year, and they still won the Super Bowl. Now, that doesn't mean too much for you when you're talking about your fantasy league, but it does mean that Patrick Mahomes isn't done. Patrick Mahomes is still in his prime, and this team is running for the opportunity to win 3 in a row, something nobody's done. After that, you got Lamar Jackson at 4. You've got Anthony Richardson at 5, and that's a very aggressive ranking for Anthony Richardson. But when you consider that the 2 games he actually played in full, or 2 of the 3, he finished as QB2 and QB4 those weeks, I think we got to be aggressive on Anthony Richardson. And in single quarterback leagues, I think it's better to be aggressive on him because you can back it up easily later with a Kirk Cousins or Jared Goff, a Baker Mayfield in a 14-team league, whatever it might be. Somebody else safe just in case he isn't great. You'll figure it out. But the upside for Richardson is the guy who's going to be top 5 on this board. And unfortunately, you have to pay that price. You're going to see Joe Burrow ranked ahead of Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud, even Dak Prescott. Some guys like that might be ranked ahead of him. I have it Richardson, Burrow, Prescott, CJ Stroud at 8. Jordan Love at 9, who was tremendous last year, especially that second half of the season. Kyler Murray at 10, who again has a lot of rushing equity. Great late investment. If you want to wait on quarterbacks this year, it's perfectly fine. Brock Purdy at 11, Kirk Cousins at 12. But that's my top 12. And you're missing a few big names from it, Matt. But I do believe that that is the best 12 that I could throw out there in fantasy in terms of the weapons they have around him, in terms of the performances we've seen from them, and the investability factor at the position.
Well, first and foremost, you give a sensible dissection of it. And I think, yeah, we could split hairs, like you said, but at the end of the day, it's a very sensible approach. And also keeping in mind that some of the rookie wide receivers that are coming in with a lot of hype will probably have some of that bloom fall off onto their respective quarterbacks, causing people to draft them just slightly higher. Let's go down to the next tier here, because after working with you for forever, I understand that we make our money in the middle of drafts and that next tier down. So let's go now to that next tier down.
Well, look, this is the tier you have to worry about for Superflex leagues, right, or deeper leagues. So at 13, I have Jared Goff, and we already talked last week about Jared Goff, that he's going to play the majority of his games indoors, even on the road this year. And that is a huge thing for Jared Goff because the numbers just bear that out over time. He is much better inside. He is an indoor cat, Jared Goff. Justin Herbert has gone from a top 10 guy to 14. What an incredible value. I'll take him. Tua Tagovailoa, again, up and down last year. He comes in at 15. Now we have the rookies, Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels. Now I have them back to back. I'll take whoever's cheaper. And most of the time it's going to be Jaden Daniels, who, from a rushing perspective, might end up outscoring Caleb Williams. It's just something you have to keep in mind there. You have Baker Mayfield, very steady, coming in at 19, behind Trevor Lawrence at 18, but you could easily flip-flop them all the way to 20 at Matthew Stafford. I feel pretty good. After that, you get to Aaron Rodgers, Deshaun Watson, Geno Smith, and Derek Carr. Now, in Superflex leagues, I don't want to live there with those guys. But I do want to bring up Baker Mayfield because I think last year we don't give him enough credit for what he did. If you just take away the name Baker Mayfield and all the history of the drama and everything that's gone on, the expectations and the failures and the many different teams, but just look at the numbers. 4,000 yards last year, 28 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. It's a really solid QB2, high-end QB2 season. He finished actually as QB 10 last year, okay? So Baker Mayfield might be a guy you could slide in there at a really good draft value as your second quarterback. Is it the sexiest pick like a Caleb Williams or a Jaden Daniels? No, but you know what you're getting with Baker Mayfield, and something to keep in mind when you're looking into that second quarterback in your Superflex formats for 2024. Now, when we move on to the tight end position, it might be the old guy at the top we need to put back there because, again, like Patrick Mahomes, people's memories are way too short. We'll talk about it more when we return on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. they didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The Cam Rising stuff last year with Utah, 3 months of pretending he was questionable with a torn ACL, ridiculous.
It's a lot of gray right now when it comes to this stuff, and we really are. When people say we're in like the second or third inning of sports betting, that's why I agree, because there's so many of those situations that are very, very difficult to explain to a novice.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
A surprise winner on the PGA Tour. Taylor Pendrith ends up winning his first PGA Tour win.
He was pretty darn lucky to win. Ben Coles should have won that tournament. Also seeking his first PGA Tour victory, he went into the 18th hole, the easiest hole on the golf course, with a one-shot lead, and he was there in two, just less than 30 feet from the cup.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Devastating loss to Georgia Tech, where they made significant coaching errors, but Miami, with all of these changes, obviously looking to churn over this roster and upgrade the talent level.
Don't sleep on Rick Pitino. Listen, at the end of the day, the portal is the portal, Mike. Don't matter where you came from, it's where you're going and how much money can you get.
Inside the transfer portal, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports Today. Matt Striker alongside the award-winning Joe Pisapia. Here we are giving you everything you need in order to dominate, whether it be season-long DFS or straight-up wagering. Right now, we are looking ahead at the football season. We are the only ones doing it this way because we're the only ones that have the guy that literally wrote the book. The Fantasy Black Book is out there. You can see what it does. The new one is on its way. It's changed the way people have wagered on sports and just looked at player comparisons. And what I really like about that, Joe, what you've introduced here, and later on in the show, we're going to introduce a brand new system that you're going to unveil. I'm excited about that. What you've done is you've allowed the person that follows your way to separate themselves from everyone else in their draft room, everyone else in their league, because we don't look at players the same way as everyone else. And that's example here in the tight end rankings for the upcoming season. You have RPV. I'll let you explain what that means, and I'll let you get into the early ranks.
Yeah, relative position value. That's what we're talking about. The guys, when you compare them to the rest of their class and at their position, how much better they are than the fantasy league average. At the end of the day, the more you can outperform your co-managers in your league, well, guess what? That's an opportunity for you to win on a weekly basis. It's a very simple system that we use, the relative position value. Easy to apply. It makes sense. It's easy to adjust based on your league scoring or depth of league, and that's what you want to be. You want to have something that people can use to quantify value. And when you're quantifying the value at the tight end position, already in the expert consensus rankings, already in most people's rankings, Travis Kelce's no longer the tight end one. I didn't get that memo. I love Sam Laporta. I was a big, how many times did we talk on this show last year about Sam Laporta in August? And I said, let's keep an eye on this guy. And then week one, he had that great game against the Chiefs. And even though he didn't necessarily pop with the fantasy numbers, you could see the usage was there. And he said, oh my goodness, Sam Laporta is going to be a part of this offense. And he was fantastic. He did have an injury at some point. And I'm not knocking Sam Laporta. But Travis Kelce was hurt going into the season. Travis Kelce was hurt in that game. Travis Kelce was hurt in 2023. And it wasn't until you got to the playoffs of 2024 they started to look like Kelce. Let me just run through this again for you, okay? Since 2016, these are the finishes for Travis Kelce at tight end. You ready? 2016, tight end 1. 2017, tight end 2. 2018, tight end 1. 2019, tight end 1. 2020, tight end 1. 2021, tight end 2. 2022, tight end 1. Last year, tight end 3, even when he was hurt. Stop. Please, can we please put Travis Kelce back at the top of this board? It's just crazy to think about. They know what they have ahead of him, and they have a really clear path in the AFC, I think, this year, potentially to get back to the Super Bowl and do that trio. Get that back to back to back. The thing that Tom Brady couldn't do it. Nobody's done it, right? Not the Don Shula Dolphins, not any of the other Pittsburgh Steeler legacy teams. Nope. So you have something really special, and it's not lost on them. Now, will they get there? We'll see. But if you're talking about just the health of this player, and I get it. I understand he's older. I understand there's a lot of tread on the tires. And maybe he's not going to be the guy who gets you that crazy level of productivity anymore. But can he still be the tight end one? I think so. And what's great is you don't have to pay first-round value for him. You're seeing him already go in the second round, sometimes the third round of drafts because people are a little concerned. That, to me, is the best value. That means you can get an Amon-Ra St. Brown to start your team, a really strong potential running back or wide receiver in the second round, and then maybe, just maybe, you get Travis Kelce in the third round. Again, I'm seeing it happen. That is a hell of a start to a team. So let's not forget about Travis Kelce, please, at the top. After that, Laporta at 2, Mark Andrews at 3, Trey McBride at 4, a guy who could very well lead his team in targets. I think it will probably be Marvin Harrison Jr., but McBride's going to be right there in lockstep. He is going to get a ton of work in this offense. That's very exciting. So if you miss out on the top 2 guys, Trey McBride is a fantastic consolation prize. He might even go behind George Kittle or even Kyle Pitts or Evan Ingram. Kittle at 5 for me, Pitts at 6, Evan Ingram at 7, but Trey McBride to me is 4 because I think of his role in that offense and what it could be. Dalton Kincaid at 8, Jake Ferguson from Dallas at 9, then David Njoku at 10, Cole Kmet at 11, who had a really good season last year. The question is now with Keenan Allen, what does that target share look like? And Bears quarterbacks haven't exactly been prolific in our lifetime. No Bears quarterback has thrown for 4,000 yards ever. So maybe Caleb Williams breaks that trend. Maybe. But as much as we look at Cole Kmet's breakout season last year, now we have to temper our expectations because now you have Keenan Allen with DJ Moore and you have a new quarterback. So we don't know what it's going to be. Then at 12, we have Dalton Schultz and Brock Bowers outside of that grouping. But if Brock Bowers is used as a tight end, if he is used as a slot receiver, if he's used as an H-back, there's lots of opportunities for Brock Bowers to possibly get into this top 12 or even top 10 because of how extraordinary of a talent he is. But again, quarterback play, that's the thing that could hold him back ultimately. So when we return, we're going to continue to pivot through the rankings here and look at the wide receivers where we really make our money in fantasy.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The Cam Rising stuff last year with Utah, 3 months of pretending he was questionable with a torn ACL, ridiculous.
It's a lot of gray right now when it comes to this stuff, and we really are. When people say we're in like the second or third inning of sports betting, that's why I agree, because there's so many of those situations that are very, very difficult to explain to a novice.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
A surprise winner on the PGA Tour. Taylor Pendrith ends up winning his first PGA Tour win.
He was pretty darn lucky to win. Ben Coles should have won that tournament. Also seeking his first PGA Tour victory, he went into the 18th hole, the easiest hole on the golf course, with a one-shot lead, and he was there in 2, just less than 30 feet from the cup.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Devastating loss to Georgia Tech where they made significant coaching errors, but Miami with all of these changes obviously looking to churn over this roster and upgrade the talent level.
Don't sleep on Rick Pitino. Listen, at the end of the day, the portal is the portal, Mike. Don't matter where you came from, it's where you're going and how much money can you get.
Inside the transfer portal, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back into, pardon me, FST Fantasy Sports Today. Matt Striker and Joe Pisapia with you here. And the reason I'm all worked up is during the break, we were talking about a brand new concept here at SportsGrid. It is the SportsGrid Fight Club. Essentially, it is celebrity boxing, but within our world. And Joe Pisapia says there's a few people he would love to get into the SportsGrid Fight Club realm with. I wonder, who do you think would be the SportsGrid champion at the end of the day, with everyone that works here behind the scenes? Or who would ultimately be the SportsGrid Fight Club champion, Joe?
Well, see, you if you had the will, but I know not anymore. Like, you're past that.
The will.
Nah, it's like the old man in the sea now for you. You're just on the boat, life lessons of things. Like, you're past that.
So who would it be?
Joe Lisi's a tough guy. I've hung out with Joe. I think Joe will throw a punch at you, which I respect that. Honestly, I think it's all the Joes here. I think the Joes at the end of the day, like, that's the grouping that you want in that ring, or at least the tag team that you want on your side, I would say.
Sure.
But I was thinking more like higher brow, because I think everybody who plays fantasy football at some point would love to get in the ring with somebody that's ruined their fantasy football team. I think that would be a fun thing for them. It would be a short fight for most people.
Is very long.
Oh, the line for Arthur Smith is very long.
It's like that scene from Airplane. You just keep going down the line, and everyone just has a different weapon. A list
like,
of
you pull the ticket at the deli counter. There's just no tickets left. Everyone's just
all right. Funny. But our tickets are going to be cashed. You mentioned it before the break about we make our money on the wide receivers. So we're talking about early season ranks, all kidding aside. We've talked quarterbacks, we've talked tight ends, but now let's get into wide receivers, because this is where I think if you reach too early or you wait around too late, it could make or break your season, Joe. Let's get started.
All right, let's start at the very top with CeeDee Lamb. He's my 101 period this year. Yes, more than Christian McCaffrey even. Why? Because wide receivers stay healthier than running backs. And look, I know Christian McCaffrey was fantastic last year. He's back to being, the elite level Christian McCaffrey. That's fine. I don't want to live in the past. Running backs get hurt more frequently. And CeeDee Lamb, finally, after all these years of us waiting for him to become this guy, now he's become this guy, and now we don't want to believe in it. It's stupid. It's stupid. Let's not do it to ourselves. CeeDee Lamb at the 1. Tyreek Hill is at the 2, but Tyreek Hill did have some issues down the road last year in the second half that are a little concerning. Again, quarterback play at the end of the year, too, wasn't great, but let's hope that some better health will get us there. But again, when the players have their games that are so based in their speed, when that speed even starts to take a half step away, things are a little bit more concerning. But still, again, we're trying to split hairs with the elites. It's kind of a waste of time. Jamar Chase at 3. Now, Chase could easily be the guy at the number 1 spot at the end of the year. All that has to happen is curly-haired Joe Burrow has to stay healthy for an entire season behind an offensive line that protects him. And Jamar Chase also has to stay healthy for an entire year with curly-haired Joe Burrow in order to get to the top of this rank. It's very possible he could.
Joe is bald for all our radio listeners, by the way. Just do a quick Google search of him.
Joe Burrow, I love Joe Burrow. The hairstyle is a little soul glow right now. It's fantastic. Eric LaSalle would be jealous. Justin Jefferson at number 4, which is not where we're used to seeing Justin Jefferson. We're used to seeing him at 1. But the problem is, can we make him 1 with Sam Darnold or J.J. McCarthy? That's a hard sell for me. Because to be prolific, you do need a quarterback that can help you get there. It's not very often you get somebody who's a prolific wide receiver 1 overall that doesn't have a quarterback, again, of the presence of a Kirk Cousins or even last year, Dak Prescott, right? Think about how much crap those two quarterbacks take. But they've produced number 1 overall wide receivers, haven't they? So can J.J. McCarthy and Sam Darnold do that? Probably not. So you can't put Justin Jefferson 1. Amon-Ra St. Brown is probably the most underappreciated asset. You're going to be in the 5th, 6th spot of your draft, and Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to be there pretty much every time. And you know what? I will take him every single time he's available. He has been so steady. Last year, 164 targets, 119 receptions, 10 touchdowns, 1,500 yards. Again, if you say those were Jamar Chase's numbers last year, everybody puts Jamar Chase number 1, but they're not going to put Amon-Ra St. Brown 1. I think it's a failure collectively of the fantasy football writer community, analyst community, whatever you want to call it, because Amon-Ra St. Brown has been that dude. And again, the middle of the draft this year, it's just so easy to take him there. If you're in a salary cap league and Jefferson goes high and Chase goes high and Amon-Ra goes for a little bit less, take the savings with Amon-Ra. A.J. Brown at 6, Puka Nacua all the way up at 7. An incredible season for him, an incredible offense for him to operate in. Health sometimes can be an issue for him. That's the only outlier for him that you throw in there, saying could be negative. He was hurt a lot in college, had some injuries he had to work through last year, but man, what an impressive rookie season for him. Garrett Wilson, is an incredible talent, but this is the poster child for, at number 9, talent is great. If you don't have the quarterback to execute that talent, it doesn't matter. Just ask Garrett Wilson how he feels about it. Devontae Adams at 10, Marvin Harrison Jr., again, aggressive ranking by me at 11, and Drake London even more aggressive at 12. I think those two guys are in a situation for breakout seasons, both exceptional talents, Marvin Harrison especially so. I expect Marvin Harrison to hit the ground running. There's no early discounts with Marvin Harrison. He's going as early as 10 and as late as sometimes 15. So you just have to, kind of grit and bear it. If you want Marvin Harrison Jr., you're going to have to pay for him. But Matt, that's what the wide receiver 1 grouping looks like in my rankings so far as we're looking early on in the fantasy football season.
All right, I like it, but what I really want to talk about is when we move on to the 2, the 3, those tiers there, because look, there's a lot of hype about rookie wide receivers coming in, and where do we take them? Is it safe to reach around early, or should we wait? Because obviously people are going to react to what their draft does. I mean, we say this time and again, do not react to what the manager before you did, right? We understand unless it totally poaches you. But how do we approach this next tier?
The next tier is intriguing because it's filled with guys who could even break out and become superstars. And it's filled with a lot of veterans who could also go in the other direction. And that's what's interesting about wide receiver 2. Still some good value at 13, DJ Moore. A lot of people have DJ Moore as a wide receiver 1. I have him right in the fringe of wide receiver 2. Why? Because he's playing with a rookie quarterback. And even though he's the 1-1 quarterback, Trevor Lawrence was the 1-1 quarterback a couple of years ago, and he didn't exactly, pop off in that first year, and he was the generational quarterback talent too. Just like people talk about Caleb Williams, a generational quarterback talent. And they still might be. And there's still time for Lawrence to get there and plenty of time for Caleb Williams to get there. I'm just not there yet because I want to see it first. Chris Olave at 14, solid wide receiver 1. If you can get him there, even better as a 2. Michael Pittman Jr., that's the guy that I want to circle. We'll come back to him at 15. Mike Evans at 16, Cooper Kupp at 17. These are your veterans right here where, look, they've been around a while, a lot of tread on the tires. Evans coming up a reborn season, basically, with Baker Mayfield, of all people, if you can believe it. Set up for success again here, and he's been so steady. How do you say no? Eventually, it's going to come to an end, but it's really difficult to see it being this year. Cooper Kupp, an incredible coin flip of value. If you flip the coin and you get it right, he's winning you a league. If you get it wrong now, it doesn't kill you like it did when he was a top 5 pick. And I think that is what makes it more intriguing now. Then you have the 2 guys from the 49ers, Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. Now, Deebo could end up somewhere else potentially. And if he does, that money's going to go to Brandon Ayuk for probably, $25 to $30 million a year. We'll see how that all shakes out. Amari Cooper at 20. Again, I don't believe in Deshaun Watson, so I'm going to ding him here. Keenan Allen at 21, Jalen Waddle at 22. Waddle, incredible year-over-year value. In fact, if you want to circle somebody that is being the most disrespected in early ranks, it's probably Jalen Waddle. He is just 1 year removed from being a guy who can catch 100 balls. We can go right back to that again. DK Metcalf at 23 and T. Higgins at 24. But Pittman is that guy, again, if Anthony Richardson does what he's capable of doing in that Shane Steichen offense, which is really exciting. Pittman already last year with Gardner Minshew, only 4 touchdowns, but 109 catches for 1152. He could duplicate that and double that touchdown total, and Pittman will be launched into top 10 wide receiver range.
Absolutely. All right, that's 1 through 24. With the time that we have left, let's look at the remainder, 25 through 36, and give me one standout.
Well, look, you've got Diggs, Devonta Smith, Christian Kirk, Zay Flowers, Terry McLaurin, Jaden Reed, Tank Dell, Malik Neighbors, Hollywood Brown at 33, then Lockett, Addison, and Pickens. Jaden Reed is the interesting one here because Reed had a great rookie season, 64 catches for 793 and 8 touchdowns, a lot of touchdowns. But if Christian Watson's healthy and on the field, that dynamic could change. So he could be just as good, if not better, or he could take a step backwards potentially if Watson is 100%. So interesting stuff there at the wide receiver position. We come back, the running backs on FST.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. the New York team has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The Cam Rising stuff last year with Utah, 3 months of pretending he was questionable with a torn ACL, ridiculous.
It's a lot of gray right now when it comes to this stuff, and we really are. When people say we're in like the second or third inning of sports betting, that's why I agree, because there's so many of those situations that are very, very difficult to explain to a novice.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
A surprise winner on the PGA Tour. Taylor Pendrith ends up winning his first PGA Tour win.
He was pretty darn lucky to win. Ben Coles should have won that tournament. Also seeking his first PGA Tour victory, he went into the 18th hole, the easiest hole on the golf course, with a one-shot lead, and he was there in two, just less than 30 feet from the cup.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Devastating loss to Georgia Tech, where they made significant coaching errors, but Miami, with all of these changes, obviously looking to churn over this roster and upgrade the talent level.
Don't sleep on Rick Pitino. Listen, at the end of the day, the portal is the portal, Mike. Don't matter where you came from, it's where you're going and how much money can you get.
Inside the transfer portal, only on SportsGrid.
Great.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports Today. Matt Striker and Joe Pisapia with you here. A great lineup of programming here on SportsGrid, and a quick reminder, at SportsGrid TV. Those are our social media handles. Give us a follow. Also, check out our app as well. I promise you it will change your life. Speaking of changing lives, Joe, this show right now is getting a great response, and it will continue to do so because it shall live all the way up to when people start drafting, and I love that. Thank you to everyone at SportsGrid for even thinking of it, and thank you to you, Joe. Let's go to the running backs now. Let's start at number one, our early running back rankings. I can't imagine who it's going to be.
I know. Spoiler alert, it's Christian McCaffrey. It's boring.
Oh,
it works. And if you want to take him 1-1, you can. I'm taking CeeDee Lamb 1-1. After that, if you want to take Christian McCaffrey at 2, I think that's the lock. So the conversation this year is, do you want to go in the wide receiver realm and build your team that way with the first overall pick, or do you want to do it with Christian McCaffrey? And I just prefer to do it with CeeDee Lamb to start my team, to build that roster. That's how my preference is, but not going to split hairs here. Now, you'll see in a lot of expert consensus rankings too, overall, you'll see guys like Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson as first-round picks. I think they both are, but I think they're later first-round picks than everybody else does. I would still prefer to go from Lamb over at 1 all the way down to probably A.J. Brown at 6 before I want to take another running back not named Christian McCaffrey. So to me, these are guys you take around 8, 9, 10 potentially. And that's how I see the board, because I can understand taking Breece Hall over Puka Nacua, but I can't understand taking him over Amon-Ra St. Brown. That's just nuts. But after the 1-1 of running backs, Christian McCaffrey, Breece Hall is 2, Bijan Robinson at 3. I'm very excited to see what Bijan looks like in an offense that isn't led by Arthur Smith and isn't led by Desmond Ridder or Taylor Heineke. I want to see it with Kirk Cousins, a real boy, a real live quarterback. Can we remember some of the elite seasons that Dalvin Cook had? Right? I mean, those are pretty good seasons. I know it's a different offense. I get that. But when you have a capable quarterback who's capable of putting points up on the board and moving the chains, that's very exciting news for Bijan Robinson. So it's time to already get excited about Bijan. I know last year I was excited. Maybe it was a year too early. Now we're in a much better position. Saquon Barkley at 4 for me. With the Philadelphia Eagles, this is the best offensive line he's ever played with, period. Even without Jason Kelce there, it's still the best offensive line he's ever played with, especially for running the football. So there's a little chip on the shoulder. There's a little bit of let me prove it kind of thing. I think that's all really good. The 2024 redraft value of Saquon Barkley, I find fascinating. I love to take Barkley at the turn with a Puka Nacua. That'd be a great way to start a team this year. Jonathan Taylor at 5. Slow start last year because he was holding out. And he came back, and we all know every time these guys come back when they're holding out a little bit, it's not always the same. They had some other issues and injuries, and Taylor's had that, so you got to knock him down a peg. Jahmyr Gibbs at 6, a brilliant season. We talked about patience. I remember people wanting to trade, wanting to drop Jahmyr Gibbs last year. Do you remember those conversations where we talked about buying low on Jahmyr Gibbs? Well, if you did, he probably got you to the playoffs and a championship last year, because Jahmyr Gibbs was fantastic in the last 6 to 8 games of the season. Derrick Henry at 7. Love Derrick Henry in Baltimore. Again, another rejuvenation potentially for him. This is a team that has to run the football, committed to run the football. Much better quarterback situation. A lot of touchdown potential here for Derrick Henry this year. So in standard leagues especially, or half PPR, circle Henry is a great value. Then Alvin Kamara at 8, Travis Etienne at 9, Rachaad White at 10, a very solid season for him. I have Kyron all the way to 11, which is lower than the consensus, who has him at 7. 12, Joe Mixon there at Houston, new spot for him. But the guy I want to talk about right now, and again, Kyron's dinged for me because of the foot issue. It's early. That could change. If the foot looks good and he's in camp again in a couple months, okay, great. We'll move him up to the top 10. But right now, he's outside of it because of that. But Alvin Kamara, I want to talk about for a second. Now, he finished as RB24 last year, but he only had 6 touchdowns total. He still was the guy working at the top of this depth chart. He was still the every down back. He's still the guy in PPR leagues who's going to catch a ton of balls. Last year, he got 75 balls for the New Orleans Saints, a team that had terrible offensive line play. They addressed it a little bit this offseason through the draft. They certainly could get better. But I don't understand why all of a sudden we're abandoning Alvin Kamara as an RB1. I think it's a poor idea. He is more involved in the passing game than so many other running backs. I don't believe in the depth chart behind him. The Kendre Millers of the world don't really scare me off at this point. So I think, Matt, we're just kind of, once again, like Travis Kelce or Patrick Mahomes. We get kind of tired sometimes, or fatigue of players that are just really good. I'll take those players. If you don't want them, I'm happy to have them. I mean, Jamal Williams was there last year, but like, again, is Jamal Williams scaring us necessarily? No. So for me, Alvin Kamara, once again, is that guy that I come back to and I say, if you're going to let Alvin Kamara be an RB2, which again, the consensus has him as RB17 right now, I'll take that every single day of the week. You give me as an RB2, sure. On all my teams, man, all of them.
All right, that's 1 through 12 in the running back rankings. Let's look at 13 through 24, because at a glance, I can see half of these guys, and I'd be willing to draft. But let's have a conversation. Let's go.
Aaron Jones at 13, new spot, Minnesota. I love Zamir White. I've got him at 14 again. If you're going early wide receiver, Zamir White's going to get all the volume in Las Vegas. There's nobody else there, and he proved he could do it last year. Devon Achane, Miami, incredible talent. We got to pause here with him because last year he had 11 touchdowns in 11 games played. You average a touchdown a game, you have my attention. He's explosive, he's fast, he's fun, he's small, he's injury prone. There's a lot of upside, a lot of downside with Devon Achane. So it really comes down to how cheap you can get him. He finishes RB21 only because he didn't play enough games. And he still has Mostert there as well in that depth chart now. You know, Mostert I didn't think would play as much as he did last year, but he did. So we have to kind of just be careful with Devon Achane because he is one of these guys, kind of like Cooper Kupp in that same general area at wide receiver. He could make your season or could possibly undo it also if he doesn't play enough or he misses significant time. Josh Jacobs at 16. I'm a little concerned about Marshawn Lloyd in Green Bay, chipping in eventually in Josh Jacobs' spot. 17, Isaiah Pacheco, Kansas City. Then you got James Conner, old reliable in Arizona at 18. Now Benson was drafted, but it's still Conner till further notice. Cook, Walker, Montgomery, Brian Robinson. Then you have Raheem Mostert at 23 and DeAndre Swift at 24. So RB2, definitely some guys out there worth drafting. Again, Alvin Kamara, RB17 in the marketplace. Zamir White, RB14. If that's my backfield and I'm going in with elite wide receiver play and those two running backs in rounds 3 and 4, I'll go to war with that every single time. We come back, more breakdowns here on FST.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The Cam Rising stuff last year with Utah, 3 months of pretending he was questionable with a torn ACL, ridiculous.
It's a lot of gray right now when it comes to this stuff, and we really are. When people say we're in like the second or third inning of sports betting, that's why I agree, because there's so many of those situations that are very, very difficult to explain to a novice.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
A surprise winner on the PGA Tour. Taylor Pendrith ends up winning his first PGA Tour win.
He was pretty darn lucky to win. Ben Coles should have won that tournament. Also seeking his first PGA Tour victory, he went into the 18th hole, the easiest hole on the golf course, with a one-shot lead, and he was there in two, just less than 30 feet from the cup.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Devastating loss to Georgia Tech, where they made significant coaching errors, but Miami, with all of these changes, obviously looking to churn over this roster and upgrade the talent level.
Don't sleep on Rick Pitino. Listen, at the end of the day, the portal is the portal, Mike. Don't matter where you came from, it's where you're going and how much money can you get.
Inside the transfer portal, only on SportsGrid.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports Today. Matt Striker and Joe Pisapia with you here while we are laughing during the breaks. We're having a great time. We're all part of the SportsGrid family. And I'm very happy to be the one that gets to introduce this brand new metric that Joe Pisapia and everyone over at the Fantasy Black Book have come up with. Now, Joe has changed the way that we look at sports. We spoke about RPV before, and if not, just quickly go look it up when you have a chance. But now we have an ECO system, an ecosystem. Joe often talks about the offensive ecosystem, especially in football. So now we have the expected collective offense system. And what Joe and his team have done here is they have given a grade to the quarterback, the head coach, the offensive line, and the skill players around within the offensive sect. They come up with a star rating and then a level. Joe, this is absolutely fantastic. I think it's genius on your part, because it lets me look at this graphic when we're going to show it in a moment and immediately see who stands out, who's elite. And honestly, the elite, after the drop-off, it's rough, my friend. But let's start here. Walk us through how you came up with it and how it can help us, Joe.
Well, look, I got tired of saying all the time, look at the good offensive ecosystems and that phrase, and saying, look at the teams that are putting points up on the board, and the teams that are going to be exciting, or looking ahead to the teams that are set up for success. A couple years ago, I remember having a conversation with Derek Brown where he was higher on the Eagles than anybody else 2 years ago. Guess what? That team went all the way to the Super Bowl and almost won. So we're talking about looking at all the pieces that are in the right position for success. And I know it sounds very cliche, but if you want to be good at fantasy football, invest in players on good teams, right? But that's not enough. So let's quantify it a little bit, because I think it's important to put some sort of marker on it, so you understand that it's not just opinion based. Now, some of it is a little bit of opinion based, as I am grading these things, but I'm not grading them out of thin air. We're taking PFF data, we're taking data from Fantasy Pros, we're taking data from a lot of places, and putting it and combining it into a situation where you can really look at it, and we can argue if you think this head coach is a 5 and this head coach is a 4 or whatever it is. But still, you're getting an idea. And these are not all 32 teams. If you want to see all 32 teams, you got to go into the Black Book that's coming out in early June and check it out. See what I did there? Shameless promotion.
Well done.
But if you look at the ecosystem here are the elite teams, the teams that have high-end quarterback play, high-end head coach, high-end offensive line, skill players, all of it. So you have Kansas City, the Eagles, the 49ers, the Ravens, the Bengals, the Colts are in there, and people might be surprised about this, but again, a lot 3-4s will get you into that elite range. And I think the offensive line is still a 5, I think, in terms of personnel. Then you have the Lions and the Rams. So these are the elite. So what's great about this is, obviously, the Kansas City Chiefs guys, Mahomes and Kelsey are going to go early. McCaffrey, A.J. Brown, all those guys are going to go early, right? But then think about some of the other players too, not just the front end guys, but also some of these players later on in drafts. Think about last year, Jahmyr Gibbs, right? Think about a player who was being drafted a little bit later. Think about, as you go deeper, guys like Puka Nacua being the perfect example of a guy that nobody even drafted, but because he was in a good offensive ecosystem with a great head coach, offensive line, and quarterback, he ended up being a top 10 wide receiver last year, undrafted. Why? Because of the ecosystem. Michael Pittman, another guy, great ecosystem, great head coach, great offensive line. They didn't have the quarterback play, but this year they're going to. And that 4 could easily be a 5 at the end of the year. Again, we're not going to give you all the good, the bad, and the ugly, but these are some that are kind of in that middle, in that average tier. And like everything else, I always think it's important to highlight the one team that could be an outlier. And the reason for that is because no system is perfect. So if you're looking in here, these are the ones that kind of fall into that league average. The Jaguars, the Bears, because a lot of unknowns, the coach, the quarterback, a lot of unknowns. Talent, sure. Applicability, we don't know. Same thing with Washington. The Cardinals are in this grouping, the Raiders, the Broncos, and the Seahawks. You start to see them go from average to below average right here, right? You see the star ratings start to fall off from the average teams to the below average, starting at the Raiders because of the quarterback play. But the outlier could be the Cardinals, and here's why. Last year, it's really the offensive line that's a 1 right now, that is not very good, that really held them back. But this team did play for Gannon. They played hard. That's a positive. So the head coaching grade could improve this year. You didn't have Kyler Murray for the full season. Now you have an elite level wide receiver, Marvin Harrison Jr., who is absolutely that dude. You have the emergence of Trey McBride. You drafted Benson, so now you have deeper running back room for the inevitable injury that's going to happen to James Conner. So if there is a team in this outlier in the middle of this pack here between average and below average, the Cardinals could be that team that could jump that tier. But that's a taste of what the offensive ecosystems could be for your fantasy leagues in 2024. We come back, more fantasy sports today on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The Cam Rising stuff last year with Utah, 3 months of pretending he was questionable with a torn ACL, ridiculous.
It's a lot of gray right now when it comes to this stuff, and we really are. When people say we're in like the second or third inning of sports betting, that's why I agree, because there's so many of those situations that are very, very difficult to explain to a novice.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
A surprise winner on the PGA Tour. Taylor Pendrith ends up winning his first PGA Tour win.
He was pretty darn lucky to win. Ben Coles should have won that tournament. Also seeking his first PGA Tour victory, he went into the 18th hole, the easiest hole on the golf course, with a one-shot lead, and he was there in 2, just less than 30 feet from the cup.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Devastating loss to Georgia Tech, where they made significant coaching errors, but Miami, with all of these changes, obviously looking to churn over this roster and upgrade the talent level.
Don't sleep on Rick Pitino. Listen, at the end of the day, the portal is the portal, Mike. Don't matter where you came from, it's where you're going and how much money can you get.
Inside the transfer portal.